Hello everybody, I'm Rowan6 with Rowan6 Entertainment, and welcome to a new series, a audiobook series of my fanfiction, The Dragon Hero Dovahkiin. The background art for this fanfiction is created by me. If you're interested in me doing art commissions for you, the link to my business Discord is down below. There's also a link to my community Discord, as well as the fanfiction link. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
Chapter 21. Serena hated mornings, especially when she was out all night getting information. If it wasn't for Izuku's ring that allowed her to sleep less, she would have been completely exhausted. But at least she wasn't the only one suffering this morning, since it looked like Izuku appeared to be in the same boat as her, or probably worse. Even though she wasn't fully awake at the moment, she could tell that he didn't get any sleep at all last night, probably too troubled over the information that she was able to obtain last night. Sitting down right next to Rumi, she could tell her and Ryuko that they were equally worried for Izuku, who just had a dark aura around him, not to mention 13 empty bottles of Nord mead. Which, now that she thought of it, she should be worried too, especially since he doesn't drink like this unless he is really pissed off. And since Lydia was nowhere in sight, it meant he drank all 13 bottles. God, he must have been really pissed off if he broke his previous record on how many bottles of Nord mead he could drink. Serena thought to herself as now she honestly wanted to ask how he was so pissed that he was able to beat his previous record, but she refrained from doing so. Instead, she decided to ask another question in hopes of diverting his anger. So, Izuku, did you look into that Momo girl as I asked? Serena asked nonchalantly. But this only made Izuku's mood go darker. Which made her wince in response, especially when she just realized that the reason for his bad mood was because of her request. What made it worse was the fact that she could even smell the mood of Rumi and Ryuko dip dramatically in worry as well. That bad? Serena asked worriedly. Oh, hick, it's worse than you thought. Izuku said clearly, drunk out of his mind. He then uncorked another bottle of Nord mead and attempted to down it. But he was stopped by Lydia, who grabbed it from his hands after she came down the steps. As Lydia took the bottle from his hands, she placed a potion bottle on the table and then spoke up. Although I am quite glad that you are clearly no longer a weak-livered milk drinker. You need to sober up and tell us what the fuck is wrong with you. Because the last time I saw you like this was when that small family just right outside of Fakriath was murdered by those bandits that escaped us when we took out their camp. Lydia said as she sat down right next to Ryuko. Taking the potion that Lydia placed on the table, due to its effects, Izuku immediately sobered up. When his mind was finally cleared, he finally noticed the stress states of Ryuko and Rumi. Wincing internally since he didn't notice their states earlier. He made a note to do something nice for them later, so after he let out a long sigh, he spoke up. First, I would like to apologize to you, Rumi, and Ryuko. I forgot how affected you are by my change of mood. Izuku said apologetically, which only made Rumi and Ryuko sigh. Rumi and Ryuko had quirks that gave them animal instincts along with heightened senses. Because of this, they were highly affected by negative pheromones and people's shift in presence. Since they see Izuku as their mate, they are even more affected by Izuku's previous and current state. Look, you do not need to apologize for being pissed, just tell us what the fuck is going on so we can help. Because I'd rather you tell us what the fuck is happening than you drinking yourself into a coma. Rumi said as she started cleaning up the bottles off the table. I agree with Rumi, You need to find another outlet when you're upset like this, instead of drinking yourself into a stupor. You know you can trust us with anything you tell us, so talk to us. Ryoko said, but she could tell that Izuku was hesitant, and it was mostly due to not knowing what to say. So she continued in the hopes of helping him out. Why don't you start with this Momo girl that Serena asked you to look into? Especially since I think both and Irumi need to know anyway, since she's one of our students. Ryoko said as she helped Rumi with the rest of the bottles. Sigh, as I said before, it's worse than Serena thought. Izuku said, and he slumped in his chair in exasperation as he pulled out a notebook before continuing. The girl we were talking about is Momo Yayorozu, age 14, her quirk is creation. By using the fat cells in her body, she can create anything that she knows the molecular structure of. The problem with this is that she needs a good storage of fat cells for it to work, otherwise, her quirk starts eating through her body. On the first day, Serena noted that she was pretty skinny when she saw her in the girls' locker room. And after seeing her quirk in action and looking it up, she got worried. Yesterday, during quirk 101, I used a medical diagnostic spell and found out that she was on the verge of starvation. Apparently, she was on a very strict diet that her parents forced her to do. I took a look at it and found out that it was one of those crappy dietary plans that were given to supermodels to keep their figures. It doesn't help that she also has an extremely high metabolism due to her quirk. I was able to talk to her parents about this yesterday. I told them that we were going to need to adjust her dietary plan. Izuku said, but before he could continue, Rumi spoke up. And let me guess, the rich assholes were having none of it. Rumi asked immediately, knowing where this was going. When Izuku nodded, Rumi and Serena let out an audible growl, but before the two could go on a rant, Ryoko spoke up. Please tell me that you did something about it? Ryoko asked as she rubbed her forehead in an attempt to get rid of an already forming headache. I tried explaining to them using reason and science, as well as the fact that Recovery Girl was backing me up, and they still refused to change her dietary plan at home. So she is now staying at UA for the night, so Nizu and I can form a case to gain custody of her due to her parents' neglect. It doesn't help that she is also conditioned to do whatever her parents want her to do through abuse. When I did my medical scans on her, I discovered that she had broken her hand and fingers multiple times over and over, all within a decade. At first, I thought these were just training injuries, seeing how advanced her combat skills were. But after talking to her parents, I took a closer look and found that her fingers and hand were broken multiple times in the exact same way. This points to obvious signs of abuse. Normally, all the evidence that we have would be enough to get custody over her, but the fact that her family has a lot of influence means getting custody over young Momo is going to be difficult. Izuku said, causing all four of the girls to get the same aura that Izuku had earlier. Now I know why the fuck you have been drinking like a fish. Fuck, now I want a fucking drink. Rumi said as she too was now rubbing her forehead in an attempt to relieve her now forming headache. Oh, that isn't the worst part. Izuku said dryly. By the divines, there's more. Lydia said in a mixture of exasperation and disbelief. Yeah, this morning when I was grabbing the mail, a letter was on our doorstep. When I went to pick it up, a bullet from a sniper rifle impacted right next to my foot. After I figured out that there was not going to be another shot, I picked up the letter and read it. Which ended up just being a very polite request from the Yayorozus to stop interfering with their daughter. So after that clear death threat, I called Nizu, and he is currently analyzing the letter and the bullet from the sniper rifle to see if we could get any clues from them. I also put up some barrier wards and some protection spells to prevent anyone from sniping through any of our windows. But I admit I am out of my depth when it comes to modern-day assassination attempts. But don't worry, I know who can help us, and I plan on meeting them at the end of today. But all of you should be on high alert until then. Izuku said, sorely tempted to go back to drinking until he dropped. But he knew he couldn't, due to his job as a teacher and what he had to do later today. But this didn't stop Lydia from opening the bottle that she took from Izuku and downing it all in one go. Which no one really cared about since they all knew that was nowhere near enough to get her anywhere close to being drunk and just enough to take the edge off. Although Rumi was a little peeved that she drank the obviously last bottle of Nord mead that was currently in the house. She ended up really liking this stuff, and the fact that it was all gone just pissed her off. She reminded herself that for the next batch that Izuku ended up making, she would have to steal enough for her to make her own stash that no one could touch. But before she could daydream about a new stash of Nord mead, the voice of Serena got her attention. So that's why you asked me to get that information, you plan on recruiting her, don't you? Serena asked, raising an eyebrow. He asked her to get that information yesterday, and she doubted that he planned to get shot this morning. Although Izuku was always known for planning ahead. So maybe he was always planning for something like this to happen, just not so soon. So having somebody like her will definitely prevent something like this from happening again, and would definitely cover up that glaring weakness that they had. You are correct, I plan on recruiting her, and before you three ask, no, I won't tell you. It's best that you don't know for your own safety. But I promise I will tell you if she decides to accept my offer and join us. Izuku said, they knew Izuku trusted them and at times that he cared about their safety more than his own. So they all knew if he wasn't telling them something, it wasn't due to mistrust but because he worried about their safety. So after the four shared a look, they all nodded their heads in agreement and started getting ready for the day. Later at the outside of UA, Izuku was annoyed by the fact that he had to push his way through reporters who were in front of the main gate of UA, and all because of that fool All Might. He and Nizu took near extreme measures just to keep his presence at UA a secret, and now all their efforts were in ruins. The idiotic musclehead Ove probably let something slip about his position at UA and, in doing so, painted a big-ass target on the school. He and Nizu knew that they couldn't keep it a secret for long, but they hoped to keep it a secret long enough for them to increase the security of the entire school. Which, due to its size, was extremely difficult and would take another week at most to finish. He would have to be on his toes for the rest of the week and see what he could do to accelerate the process of increasing UA security measures. As Izuku, Lydia, Serena, and Rumi helped the students get through the crowd with the least amount of harassment, he could not help but take satisfaction when one reporter tried to get through the UA barrier before it was slammed shut in her face. But his thoughts were cut off when he saw an absolutely exhausted Izuku. This completely confused Izuku, especially since he was still wearing the ring he had been given that allowed him to sleep more efficiently. The man should not be extremely exhausted like this, and this greatly concerned Izuku. He would need to look into this and speak with Nemuri as well as Nizu. After all, the whole point of the ring was to make sure he wasn't running himself into the ground from exhaustion. Deciding to handle it at the end of the day, before he left, he went to his first class, as he also prepared for the classes that he was going to teach. 2 hours later, cafeteria lunchtime. Izuku, Lydia, and Serena entered the cafeteria. Normally, the three would have eaten with the other teachers, but they decided that they needed to keep an eye on certain students. Especially one in particular who was sitting down in the corner with only a single fish and a small bowl of rice. Sighing, he told Lydia to grab another tray of food as he grabbed her tray, which was already stacked with food. Sitting down in front of Momo, he placed the food in the middle of the table, which shocked her. Now, Momo, due to health concerns, you are going to eat everything on this tray until there's nothing left. Am I understood? Izuku said sternly but calmly. He did not want to scare the poor girl or make her nervous, but he needed her to eat. Especially since Izuku ended up putting them through the ringer today and all against his protests. They had 3 years to work on their quirks, so they had time to work on their foundations. But the hobo was obviously attempting to rush their progress for some reason. Because of that, multiple students had to be sent to Recovery Girl due to quirk exhaustion, among other injuries, and Momo was one of them. So she needed to eat way more than she currently was, and Izuku was determined to make sure she did. I don't know if I can eat that, Momo said nervously as she rubbed her hand. Izuku noticed that she was rubbing the spots where her bones were broken multiple times. Seeing the fear in her eyes at the mere suggestion, as well as the fact that she was rubbing those spots, it became quite obvious why she did not want to eat. He really wanted to strangle her parents at the moment, but he pushed that desire away and focused. Momo, you need to eat, I promise no one will hurt you for doing so, Izuku said softly with a comforting voice that seemed to put Momo at ease a bit. But as her eyes darted around, he immediately understood why she was still hesitant. So when Lydia finally sat down, he cast an illusion spell around the table and spoke up. It's all right, Momo. I just cast an illusion spell around this table so no one would know that you had eaten more than what your parents told you to, Izuku said with a comforting smile that seemed to finally convince her to start eating from the tray that he gave her. The poor girl ate what was on the tray as quickly as possible, obviously afraid that she did not have enough time to get to all of it. She could also have been afraid that the food might be taken away from her, which Izuku had no intention of doing and would have, in fact, prevented anyone from doing so. She would have finished the whole thing, too, if it hadn't been for the school security alarm going off. Knowing immediately what a level 3 security breach was, Izuku, Lydia, and Serena made sure every student evacuated as calmly as possible. It also helped that he was able to determine that it was just the press who broke in and not a real villain. But when he felt one of his security runes go off in the teacher's lounge, he quickly realized he was wrong and that the press was just a diversion. So after he told Lydia and Serena to protect the students and to make sure they got out safely, he ran towards the teacher's lounge. On the way there, he contacted Nizu, who alerted the other teachers, so it was no surprise that he met one of the ectoplasm's clones there. Summoning a chest, he quickly pulled out Pacifist Child and strapped it to his waist. Giving the signal to the clone that he was ready, the clone opened the door and rushed in as Izuku watched to see what happened. He did not know the capabilities of this intruder, and the fact that they could get past UA security so easily meant that this person was dangerous. It was for that fact that he did not rush in immediately and instead used the clone to see what the intruder was capable of. It was a good thing, too, because the guy in the room who was wearing a dark blue hoodie that obscured his face only needed a single touch to disintegrate the clone. Izuku was about to move in and knock him out, but a black portal opened beneath the man as he disappeared into it. Cursing, he immediately informed Nizu of the situation, and he started investigating the room. Quickly determining that the only thing that had been touched was All Might's desk, he started going through it. Finding a folder with one of its edges partially disintegrated, he quickly went through it. When he figured out that the folder contained All Might's schedule for the entire month, he could not help but let out a groan. Of course, this maniac broke into the school to get to All Might, and what's worse, the bastard ignored protocol and did not put his schedule in a secure drawer. Even though now knowing the thief's quirk was disintegration, the drawer at least would have set off a secondary alarm that would have activated the cameras in the room, which would have allowed them to see his face or, at the very least, get a glimpse of it. He did attempt to get the cameras active all the time in the room, but All Might insisted that they remain off, so no one could figure out his skinny form. So they compromised by setting up the cameras so they turn on when his secure drawer in his desk is open or compromised. What's worse, during the emergency staff meeting, when Izuku brought up changing the schedules completely, the idea was immediately turned down due to All Might refusing to change his schedule. Apparently, the bastard refuses to change his routine, saying doing such things would damage the image of the symbol of peace, and the symbol of peace should not bow down to the threats of villains, among other nonsense. Knowing that it was not going to go anywhere, Izuku decided to drop this subject and use the idiot instead for something more productive. Fine, I can understand you do not want to bow to villains, so we need to move to the next topic of importance, which is to help young Momo, Izuku said, grabbing the symbol of peace's attention. Izuku knew for all of the bastard's faults and self-delusions of grandeur, the man still saw himself as a hero. So he knew that the man would probably throw his whole weight behind a clear child abuse case, especially if it was a promising hero student like young Momo. When Izuku saw that he got his attention, he explained what was happening and their current problem. Just like he expected, he was all too eager to throw his weight around. So after Nizu got the oath to co-sign a form that granted UA emergency custody over young Momo, Izuku was not expecting Nizu to ask to talk to him privately after the meeting was finished. He was also not expecting Nizu to ask him to take care of young Momo. But just because he wasn't expecting it did not mean he was against it. In fact, he honestly did not mind. So after grabbing her and explaining what was happening to young Momo, he got Serena and Lydia to take her shopping to grab what she needed before taking her home. He honestly wouldn't mind going shopping with them, but he needed to recruit a certain somebody. So after putting on his armor so his identity would not be revealed, he made his way to the world's biggest prison, Tartarus.
Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!